Twitter as Jesus
Right.
did. And I liked your, that was a good response to that. Because I feel bad ever trying to say, well, God, Jesus should have said this. No, I ain't going to tell Jesus what he should have said.
That's what I felt like
thought,
on Sunday.
Yeah.
Peter, what you write? What are you writing about here? And I went
funny.
home and I thought
that.
about this. For that text. I mean, the first century audience, I guarantee you they understood exactly what Peter was talking about.
Yeah. He was really cool. So,
well,
welcome back to the Other 167. Garrett Lell here with Pastor Ben Pierce. We were just talking about how we've got a lot of things we could talk about. And I'll tell you, as much as you think I texted you this week, I deleted about 30-40% of the words that I actually had typed up.
Back.
I said, we've got enough for right now. I don't think we'll cover them for a while. So I don't know where you want to start. I mean, I think someone suggested, a real good friend of mine was suggesting that we talk about current events in Israel and things like that.
Right.
We've also talked about a couple of just little personal things that, my randomness that hits here and there throughout the week. The current events in Israel thing is an interesting one, but I do want to be careful about the buddy who suggested this actually said, I think that'd be really interesting and, it might help you get more viewers, might help you get this. I don't care about getting more viewers at all. I care less. And I don't want anybody to take it, if we do get on that topic, as it's clickbait or anything like that.
Hot takes.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I don't have much of a take on any of it. I don't know much about it.
Yeah.
I would be really curious to maybe understand a little bit more about that. Or we can not go there.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of different ways we can go. There's a lot of different things we can talk about. So I'm going to call Preacher's Choice. You let us know. What do you want to go with?
Well, let me just say this. I mean, Israel is always going to be one of those topics that you either, it's funny. Israel's either going to be you're pro-Israel or you're, and I'm kind of like, well, golly, I know I'm going to be pro-Israel because Genesis 12, when God goes to Abraham and he says, I'm going to make you a great nation, and from that nation is going to come a seed, singular seed, being Jesus, that's going to be a blessing to all the nations. And, and you read all throughout. I mean, they're God's chosen people, and God had his hand upon it. They were called to be a light unto the nations during the Old Testament. Don't know that they lived up to that most of the time, but they're kind of like the church in that regard. We're called to be the light unto the world now. But Israel was to be the light unto the nations. They may not have lived up to it. They kind of fell into that trap of, well, we're God's chosen people. Everybody else, the heck with you. Well, that's not what God intended. God intended that through Israel, people would know the one true God. And then through Israel, God was going to send his son. So God had promised that land. If you read as they go in from out of Egypt, and you look at Joshua and you look at all the land that was promised, they didn't take over or they didn't conquer everything, but that land is their land. It is one of where we are with Israel today is no different than probably where we've been in the last. It's one of, I remember the Saturday that the terrorist attack happened. My daughter asked me, are we about to head into World War III, or what's going on in Israel? And I told her, I said, honey, no offense when I say this, because what happened is awful, but what happened is no different than, there's always going to be trouble in the Middle East. There just is. There will always be trouble in the Middle East until we get closer and closer to the end times. And then one day there is going to be peace on earth when the King of Kings and the Prince of Peace is reigning. But for now, what I would say is this. Is this the beginning of the end times? Well, I think we've been in that for a while. I think I really do believe that some of the COVID and the protocols and some of the things that we did, I think those were things that are beginning to set up that, I could begin to see. I remember thinking when I was a kid, I read the book of Revelation, and I hear people interpret how things are going to happen with the Antichrist, and I'm thinking to myself, that could never happen. Well, now I fully believe it could happen real easy as far as a one ruler, control of people and control of what you can buy and can't buy. Yeah, I can see it now. So I think we are one day closer. I don't know that this is necessarily the end, but yeah, I could see the Lord returning very, very shortly, and I'm not going to be upset about it. I can tell you that. as far as I hate to sound like I'm a home team guy, but I am. I will always be pro-Israel, just because. Hey, I read what it says. I'll bless you. I'll bless those who bless you, and curse those who curse you. So I'm going to always be on their side. Probably more so. I hate to say it. Now, I love my country, but a hot take. I love my country, but I'm going to be pro-Israel. Even sometimes I may not be as pro-American, but I'm always going to try to be pro-American too. So don't send your hate mail or anything like that.
We won't put your email in there.
There you go.
So, could you? I don't know how hard this is to do, but could you summarize for me the Holy War in 5 minutes?
No,
in a way
golly.
and let's just assume that I don't know anything about Revelations or any of that.
Let's save that topic. Let me do some work for you on that one. Okay.
I was curious. I don't really even understand the difference exactly in what we believe versus Muslims versus Jews, and where exactly it broke off, and who's on whose side. And this
I can do more of that than I can.
I think that's, and then as far as the end of times, I'm not particularly worried about the end of times.
Right.
And my mom has a really commonsensical way of looking at it. She says, the end of my times is coming in the next 30, 40 years one way or the other. I better be ready one way or the other. And whether I'm ready for tomorrow, I need to be ready to go tomorrow, whether it's the rapture or if it's just my time, my ticket, So I don't really over concern myself with it. But I will say this. I said this a lot during COVID. I said, and I like to pick on us, but I said, you know what? Southern Baptists might finally be right. They've been calling for the end of time since I was born.
Right.
I'm not sure they're not right now because this is some crazy stuff. I'm not going to lie. But not even.
Well, I knew when I stood in line
Revelation,
at Dollar General for toilet paper, I said, something ain't right here, man. This is a crazy world.
Yeah.
Well, if you really want to go back, as far as, and that's an interesting question because my daughter was asking the same thing the other night, and it was very interesting the way she asked it that I had to say, wait a second, that's not exactly right. But if you look at Islam, Judaism, and Christianity, they all stem from one man. That's why your major religions, those three anyway, can all point back to one man. His name is Abraham. Abram was his name before, and he was living in the land of Ur, and God told him, hey, I want you to go to a land. I'll show you where to go. I'll tell you when to stop. He's 75 years old. So in faith, 75-year-old man, I can't imagine how much stuff he had to pack up. Again, didn't have everything we had, of course, but still, 75 years old, you're packing up, you're moving, and God leads him down to Canaan, where the land of Canaan, which Israel and all that is in there. And God says, okay, this is land I'm going to give you. He also makes him a promise. He shows him the stars and said, as many as the stars are in the heavens, I'm going to make you a father of a nation. Well, he doesn't even have a child yet at 75. You don't have a child at 75. Odds are you may not have any. Well, fast forward, he's 90 years old, still doesn't have a child. God says, no, I'm going to promise you. I made a promise. You're going to have a child. In fact, he visits Abraham. Sarah, his wife, begins to laugh because he's thinking, am I going to have a child at 90? Come on now. She chuckles, and the Lord even says, well, why is she in there laughing? And well, I didn't laugh. It's a great story there. Yeah. So anyway, but during that time of, okay, we're going to have a child, and 90 years old, or Abraham's 100, and then Sarah's 90 when Isaac is born. Sarah gets the idea of, well, let's help God out. And I've got a handmaid over here named Hagar. Abraham, why don't you go and y'all have relations, and that'll be the son. We'll help God carry this out. Well, that boy's name was Ishmael. Ishmael becomes basically the father of Islam and the Arab nations. And so you have it all coming from there. So you have Muslim. Now Judaism, Isaac is going to be the child of promise. Well, God said through that son, Isaac, I'm going to bring a seed, singular. Well, that became Christianity when Christ was born. But the Jews, as the Israel became a nation, went into slavery and then came out through Moses, they had the law and they followed the law, and that became Judaism. And so right there from one man, you have Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. And one of the things that God told Abraham, or one of the promises that's in there, is that son Ishmael, who's basically the Muslim nations, he is going to be a wild boar, a wild donkey, so to speak, or always going to be a basically trouble is the way I would encapsulate it. That it from him is going to be a lot of issues, and that's where we are with
and
that.
that would be basically Islam.
Yep, the Islamic.
That seems to have worked out fairly accurately.
And again, Islam didn't come around until Muhammad was
So, yeah,
several hundred years after Christ.
So I knew that. So Islam didn't come around until several years after Christ, but you
Mm-hmm.
say that the beginning of that really goes back to pre-Christ. Because
Right.
when you say it comes from one man, to me, I feel like Jesus is the one that forked the road.
Right.
Up until that point, everybody was kind of going in the same direction, I thought. Jesus comes along and that kind of split Jews,
Especially
from
Jews and
Christians.
Christianity.
Right, but
and you see that in the book
but
of Acts.
Islam was kind of in its own path
Already out there. And again, not that they were following Islam until,
But
again,
then later on, they
several
went
hundred
back
years
and
after Christ.
revised history and said actually Ishmael was the right one back 5,000 years
That's
ago.
what they would say.
And we're right.
He's the son of promise.
He's the son. So is Ishmael is the equivalent of Isaac,
Well, they're half brothers.
right? But I'm
Right.
saying
In their eyes,
Isaac
yes.
to Jews
Yeah.
is what Ishmael is to Muslims.
That's it.
And do either of them they don't have a Jesus equivalent? They're waiting on their Jesus equivalent.
Well, I mean, the Jews would be waiting on the Messiah. They would not say Jesus was the Messiah. Now, some Messianic Jews, or Jews that were Jewish, have recognized Christ as Messiah. Man, they've gotten saved. They're some of the most exciting people to be around. It's interesting because, like I said, for Muhammad, when he was creating them, again, studying what I've studied about Islam, and it's quite a bit. I believe what he was sitting at a crossroads of a traveling crossroads, so he had access to so many things. Because if you look, you've got some Roman Catholic in there, you've got some Christianity, because Islam talks favorable about Jesus or Isa. He's a prophet. In fact, one of the neat things to do is take the Quran. There's a section of the Quran that talks about Isa, that he knows the way. And you can, if you know it's called the camel method. If you know it well enough, you can really begin to share with Islamic people or Muslims. Well, let's look at the Quran and what Jesus says. Now, if Jesus is the way and he knows the way, then let's look at the real book. Let's look at the scriptures, and then just begin to look at that. And I've seen that work. And so, yeah, that's how the Islamic people. So, the question was asked to me. This is what was so interesting is, my daughter asked is, well, don't they all serve the same God? Don't think so. Don't think so. And that's where, again, no, I'm not convinced they are the same God. In fact, I know they're not, because I know what Islam says about God, and that's nowhere near what the Scripture says. Now, Judaism, Christianity, maybe the same God started that as far as the law, but then sent his son to die. Yeah, I believe that. But now, as far as Islam, no, that's a sham of a God that what the Scripture is.
So you would feel that from your research on it and your studying of it, that the God themselves, again, I guess with Islam, it's Allah, or that's Allah. A completely, that's a different. That might be what they consider to be God, but it's not the same personality.
When you begin to look at and compare, again, the characteristics. I mean, they would, for the Islam and for Allah, not a problem tricking people, shaming people. No, I don't know. The Scripture says in God there is no shifting shadow. Yeah. He does not lie. He does not deceive. And so to sit there and compare the two, no, they're two different. Now, again, was God the God of Abraham and from that? But I think through the years, no, they're not the same God.
Yeah.
No, especially Allah compared to Yahweh or Abba Father. No, totally different.
I can't wait to see the analytics on this one and see what the drop-off was between the 7 and 20-minute mark as we got into this.
Good. I'm sorry
if you're still with us. No.
Yeah.
I think that's my fault. We go there, right? So, let's go there. Now, if you made it through 13 minutes of that or whatever it was something like that.
I didn't know where we were going. Anytime you bring up Israel, it's going to be
it's the hot topic now, I guess. See, I don't watch current events very much. I mean,
no, I'd be amazed. I don't much either, just because.
Did we talk about on the air of the hurricane that I didn't realize was here until it was out in a walk and I looked?
Now I do that.
No. A few weeks ago, this is not long ago. This was a few
Right.
weeks ago. We're getting ready for. It was early football season. We had a game the next day. I was texting my sister see if she could help out with Christian while I was
Y'all
coaching.
playing?
And she's like, "Well, if y'all play, but it's probably gonna be canceled." I was like, "Why?" She's like, "Well, it's raining." Or I was like, "They don't cancel for rain." I was like, "Let me look at the radar." I look at the radar. It's a hurricane that's making landfall.
Yeah,
And I'm
big
like,
eyes,
and it had just started raining. I was like out on a walk.
Yeah.
And it had just started raining. I looked. I was like, "Huh." I did not know a hurricane. It was like a tropical storm.
It did. I remember the trop.
Yeah.
Well, we played that Friday night. Fuquay did.
We played the next day.
Oh man, we were drenched, man. And then Friday we had a game against South Garner. Went up to the game. You know, we had thunderstorms in the area,
Yeah.
which I was thinking, man, it ain't gonna thunderstorm. It ain't hot enough. It was a good, cool day, but we had thunderstorms. And I remember sitting in that parking lot at 6:30 because game's at 7. I like to get there early and talk to the guys, pray with them, whatever. And lightning hit, and I said, well, there we are. They emptied the stadium, 30-minute delay at least. Did again, and I'm thinking, all right, I'm looking at radar. 8:30, we ought to be able to play this game. Let's get it in. Well, 8:30, they made everybody sit there in the parking lot. 8:30, they came and said, we're not playing.
Oh wow.
And it was clear. Oh,
Yeah.
boy, there was some hot coaches.
Yeah.
And so we had to play last night, Monday night.
Oof.
Not good.
Yeah.
Oh, it was not good.
Yeah.
That was one of them where, as a chaplain, you hear the boys say something, then they look at me and say, I'm sorry. That's how bad it was. That's so-and-so's, blah, 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 and blankety blank. And then they look at me, oh, I'm sorry. And I'm like, hey, man, watch your language. And even Coach even said, y'all's language is going to be cleaned up. So, golly, it was rough. I had to go home and wash my ears out.
Oh Lord.
Y'all had a ball game Saturday and looked like you had a great game.
Gabe had a great game. It was really cool. I had a proud Saturday as a
Yeah,
dad
you
of
did.
all. So it wasn't a fun Saturday to start with. I had to get up at like 7
I
o'clock.
know.
But
It was a busy Saturday.
it was a busy Saturday. But Reese had a horse show, her first ever horse show. And I don't think I said this on the show last week, but we talk about Reese's confidence, and she doesn't have a lack of it. But I asked her if she was nervous, and she said, "No, I am. Yeah, I'm nervous. I've never done it before." And I said, "Okay." I said, "Well, it'll be okay." I kind of gave her like a dummy down version of the speech I'd given Gabe.
Yeah.
And she said, "Well, I'm not that worried about it. I know I'll be fine." She said, "Because I'm really good at it, and everybody else is going to be nervous too. It's their first time, and they're not nearly as good at it."
Save
as
the
I am.
speech. Save the
Right.
speech, Pop.
Yeah, save the speech. I got this. I know I did. But she finished fourth, second, and
right.
second overall. She had a
it.
great start. And then Gabe, I had a goal for the game on Saturday, so it ended up we didn't have enough players, so the referees wouldn't ref. They called it a scrimmage. So the coaches refereed.
Right.
So I got bumped up to like offensive coach or whatever. I was handling all that. So I had a goal. I wanted to try to get everybody the ball that could touch the ball because there were like 14 kids. Well, Gabe gets his interception, and I'm like, well, does that count? Because I wanted to get the ball on offense. I'm like, no, he just proved that he can catch when they're not throwing it to him. And I
That's
know
right.
he can catch if we are throwing it to him. So then he got a catch, and he had a tackle, and we ended up getting everybody touched the ball that could touch it. And it was an interesting way to end. So we lost the game, but our quarterback really put it on the line with about 12 seconds left. He goes up, jumps from about the 3-yard line, gets crushed in midair, and the ball lands on the ground in the end zone before he touches out of bounds. I'm standing right there and see it. But again, the coaches are refereeing.
Right.
Me and my coach had the best view, and the other coaches are 25 yards
Yeah.
away saying, no, he didn't
No,
get in.
no
And what are we
touchdown.
going to do? We can't argue that. And so we said we'll run one more play, and they gave it to the wrong player, and he got tackled in the backfield, and we lost. But, it was it was a good way to finish things up. The Panthers didn't play this week, so that's 3
Hey,
weeks
it's a
in a row
win.
I've
It's
dodged
not a
it.
loss.
I've dodged 3. I don't
And
know how to say it 3 weeks in a row.
Washington, not Washington, but NC State didn't play, so not a loss.
Carolina's.
Well, I wasn't gonna bring it
I know,
up.
I appreciate it.
Because I live with a Tar Heel fan, and I hadn't said much to her.
Well, you live with. Well, I don't guess. So Nate goes to. He's a
Well,
Carolina
Nate,
fan. He's
I
not
got
in the
two
house, I guess,
technically,
now.
but
technically
yeah.
in the
Yeah.
Shut up. Steve.
But he is he's Tar Heel fan. So I got two that I'm close to, and then of course I got a bunch in the church that I don't say much. I try not to.
See, I gotta. I never know who listens to this thing, so sometimes I get in trouble. I talk about people not knowing that they might hear it. So if they hear it, I'm sorry. I don't really ask people who listens. I just
Right.
But that gets me in trouble sometimes. But Heather ruined my kids, or is trying to ruin my kids, because we were always Carolina fans. Her family was Carolina fans, except she's got some uncles who were State fans. And
Right, I knew they had some around.
She remarries a State fan.
Right.
And now all of a sudden they're out there with their little videos on Facebook holding their horns up and their red and stuff.
Horns.
And I've gotten in trouble for texting them saying, get that off.
Yeah,
I'm not they're not putting my kids in that red on there.
Well, I even tried, because I'm married to a Tar Heel and I'm a Wolfpack. I tried and said, look, let's let the kids be neutral.
Yeah.
And I even said, I'll even let them pull for Duke. Oh, boy. Now, oh, man, I might as well cuss. Yeah, she said, I'll let them pull for State, but not Duke.
Yeah.
And I said, okay. And I said, well, look, how about, and then when Nicole went to App State, I was like, I'm fine going to App, because I love their football program. Although right now they're struggling too.
Yeah.
But they are, and it's funny. You know how fans can be. We get these rose-colored, black-colored, gold-colored, Carolina blue-colored glasses. But the other night I was talking to one App State fan, and he basically said, we're about 8 plays away from being 6-0, 7-0. He said, we were right there with Carolina. Every game we've lost by 1 score, and I'm like, well, that goes back to either toughness or, making a bad decision or a bad play. So
Sometimes at that level, though, there's a very, very fine line between winning and losing. Sometimes you just fall on the wrong side of it a couple too many times.
Yeah, or a call.
Yeah, or a call,
But for us, it's always been the one or two plays that, what are we doing, man?
Yeah.
So.
Well, Saturday night was rough for Carolina. I mean, I hadn't said a whole lot about it. I was talking to that same friend we talked that night, and I said, well, when you're a 23.5 point favorite and you get beat, there's not much of an explanation other than you played like crap. Like, there's not another way of saying it. You can say a referee can't swing at 23.5 points, bad coaching can't play that. You just played bad. You thought you were 23.5 point favorites.
And Virginia ran against them.
Yeah.
But I don't know that anybody's really done that much. And that was the one thing I was concerned with, and I think I mentioned it a couple weeks ago, is I'm still not sold on their defense. You can have Gene Chizik as the coordinator. I'm still not sold that they are that great of a defense. And I think they have their moments. They got some great players, but I think they are susceptible, just like they were. That was a downfall last year, and even when Sam Howell was there, no offensive line and then defense, but the offense, it did well. I think there are times too, and again, golly, I've already made half the world mad with Israel and Islam, but let's go ahead and make me Carolina. I know, man. Everybody hates me. But let's say this about Carolina. I hate to say this.
You want to go politics while we're at it?
Yeah, let's do it. But I will say this. I think Mac Brown's a great coach, but I think Mac Brown sometimes shoots himself in the foot.
Yeah.
And I'll leave it at that.
The frustrating thing for me, I was telling somebody about it this week, and this actually is kind of funny. I remember something on a show that we said about this, and it was one of those times we were laughing, so it must not be anything serious. But I remember hearing us say this, like, Carolina, this is about the third or fourth time I can remember where they've had a great team, 5-0, 6-0, 7-0, getting into that part of the season. 10. And they always... But I told you on the last show, we were talking about how 97, that was the year they got to Florida State.
They had one game.
But they never get to that point. A few, maybe 10 years ago, they got to the ACC championship game and played Clemson.
Right.
But I think they weren't undefeated that year. They had lost a game at that point. One. So there was a small chance if they beat Clemson, they might get into the
playoffs.
But what I was telling him was so frustrating is they don't ever get there and then lose to Florida State in the semifinal or in the whatever. It's always Virginia in week 6 or Georgia Tech in week 8 or some App State in week 3.
When they hadn't thought about, or I don't know if they let their guard down or what. But
what we were talking about on the show that was kind of a serious thing is that we do all these things and people try to get the big things right in Christianity, and then we stump our toe and we do stupid stuff that we're just like, how did you do that? Well, that's what Carolina does. They don't ever screw up in the big moments. They mess up in the
it's those trap games.
In the trap games, right? And that's easy for Christians to do too, is to get lackadaisical and I'm on cruise control and things are good. And
I think there are plenty of times that the enemy sets up those little traps that normally wouldn't trip us up, but somehow, some way, either we're asleep at the wheel or going through the motions, and then we fall into what normally wouldn't trip us up. That's something out of the blue that never upsets us. And all of a sudden, man, we're going off and teeing off on somebody for something silly. And it's like, man, where did that come from? And that like I said, an unguarded strength is a double weakness. And whenever you think, Paul says this, he says, be careful when you think you stand, lest you fall. because oftentimes we in our walk think, okay, this is not a problem for me. And then that's when it does become a problem.
Yeah.
And I think we have to be careful and guard against every temptation that's out there.
This is going to be fun because I'm going to try to outkick my coverage with my vocabulary, and I'm
Uh-oh.
going to fail big time.
Look
Let's see if I
out,
can
look
get this
out.
right.
I do it every
learned-
Sunday.
What is it called in algebra when you're?
Oh, boy.
I think it's a transitory property when you can move, just like 2 plus 5 equals 7, 5 plus 2 equals 7. It's like
Right.
you can rearrange them and it's the same. So if that's the right one, we'll figure it out. I experienced the
Google.
transitory property of double negatives and strengths, and this week as you said that, because I was thinking about something. I remember saying on the show a while back that there was a morning I was riding to church and I felt this peace with God, and it wasn't even. You were describing on the show how sometimes it's a calm, gentle voice. It's not the
Hearing from God is
This was one of the early shows, and I thought about it after that. It might have even been the first show because I remember thinking, I really wish I would have said this at that time, and it's really come back up since then. But there was a little bit more to it than that. What I started to realize, and had started to realize over the last few months, is that all the things that were huge weaknesses for me, my being analytical, my being stubborn, my being, a risk taker. I'm a huge risk taker.
Right.
All these things are huge negatives and have cost me a lot of just mistakes.
Pain, blues, and agony.
Right. But it's really kind of interesting. With God, those can all be good qualities, and He can use them for good things. I used to clean up some of them. I'm not talking about but the same root personality things that when you direct them in the right way can become good things. So just like an unguarded strength can become a double weakness, weaknesses can become strengths when you let God guard them, right? And you let Him take that. And I think that I've really noticed something, and this was on my notes, but I never sent it to you. I don't know if we get to it today or not. But I got to kind of experience that with Gabe a little bit, because even his grandpa was telling me, was commenting on after he caught the ball or after he got the interception on Saturday, how much more confident he was and how much more lively and stuff he was.
Come developed.
And that's a little bit symbolic, I think, of my relationship with God over the last few months, because I think that Gabe started to realize, hey, I can do this.
Right.
And I do have the skills to do this if I'm put in the right place. And I think that's kind of, I started to realize over this past weekend, it's like, that's kind of where that peace comes from with God now. I understand now that with Him, God knows how to move me around as a chess piece and get me right where He wants me to be too. And I may not be any good at running my own life, but in His offense, I can be productive, and He can put me where I need to be so that I can do good things.
Right.
And I might be that scrawny little kid that all I'm good at is going to that one spot and catching that ball, but that's all He needs me to do, right? And so He can take every one of us with our particular skills and our talents and our desires and everything, and put us right where He needs us to do whatever we need to do. And that was kind of my takeaway from the end. The last thing with football, I guess, of the year was like, that's kind of how I feel like I've been with God. It's like He's shown me that you're not, on your own, you are not very good.
Yep.
But if you listen to me, we can put you in the right
and
spot.
you're right on the money. Paul puts it this way. He says, "In my weakness, that's when God provides the extra grace, and you see more of Him." It's not in our strengths; it's in our weaknesses where grace is so evident and grace is provided. I mean, I think that's the beauty of a lot of pastors, a lot of people who are used by God. Is oftentimes it's the simple people that. It's not always the Einsteins and the brilliant mind guys. A lot of times it's just a shoe salesman that God takes and makes an evangelist, or it might be just an average guy, but God turns him into. For Paul. Paul was a Hebrew of Hebrews, a Jew of Jews, if you will. He talks about in Philippians 3. He says, as for the law, man, I was a zealot. There was nobody who knew the law better than me. But then when he met Christ, he realized, man, he knows now in God's grace, my weaknesses become strengths.
Yeah, but I don't even think it necessarily has to be that you become this great evangelist or you become this great thing.
Yeah, I'm not
I think
saying that.
God does more amazing things with role players than you could ever imagine, right? Like everybody's
Well,
not
he
supposed
does.
to be in the spotlight doing, spreading this message. Sometimes it's just in the trenches, spreading that one word to that one person that needs it. And
That's right. And I think it goes back to I'm trying to think of a good analogy, and all I can think of is, all right, Mac Brown's national championship. You had Vince Young.
Yep.
All right, everybody knows Vince Young. In fact, I dare say Vince Young ain't on that team. Texas doesn't win that game.
Sure.
Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
All right, then you take you take another team that maybe doesn't have any of the names, but it's all role players. And who gets the most glory then? Usually it's the coach.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's where God specializes in, is taking a bunch of no names, which we all are,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes no talent, but turning those weaknesses into strengths so that he can be seen for what he's done. So yeah, it's not that you go out there and you're going to be the star quarterback or anything. Sometimes it's just being that role player or just being what God's called you to be. If God's called you to be a Christian mail worker or a postman, then be that and watch what God does through a Christian postman, because he can touch lives as he delivers letters or whatever. I mean, there's amazing how when you surrender to the Lord, those little things that we have, those little gifts and talents, God turns them around and uses them in great ways. And it doesn't always have to be something big, but it's amazing what he can do with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that just goes back to when you know his sovereignty and he's able to bring people into your path. Man, you're looking for, okay, Lord, you're bringing people into my path so that you can be seen in me.
Yeah. He's good at arranging the pieces where you need him to be and where he needs them to be.
Yeah, he's a good head coach. He sees
doing.
the field well.
Yeah, he does.
and I think it's just
Pretty
one
good strategist.
But you're right. I mean, it is in those weaknesses that his grace comes through, and you actually see him more.
Yeah, and I mean, my Gabe analogy is weakness becomes a strength. All right, well, one of his weaknesses is he's small and scrawny,
Yeah.
but that was actually part of his strength. He got more
Nobody
room.
looking
No,
at
I mean,
him.
seriously, he got more room than he didn't get man-to-man coverage, press coverage. He
Right.
could get space. He just needed
That's
somebody,
it.
So it's and again, my overly analytical and all this kind of stuff's good if I start analyzing the right kind of things. So it's like,
That's right.
and speaking of, I had more time this week. I did get caught up on the sermon. I made it
Oh.
physically. Hey, it's two I've made it in person. Yes, we've
There you
done
go.
this. So I made up
Look out.
I didn't get to listen the week before, so I had to make it up. I showed up in
got you.
person this time. But I really, in listening back to last week's show from playback, and maybe even the week before a little bit, and the sermon that I finally got caught up on, there were a lot of things that you said about kind of tying things together with legalism versus a relationship.
Right.
And that is really the heart of what I wanted to do this show for, I think.
Okay.
And I think you've been going there with it, and maybe I'm so worried about the red button or whatever that I'm not listening until I go back and listen to it later. But as I hear it back and later, it's like, you're really starting to tap dance around something that I want to get right to the heart of, because I think that you said, yeah, we need to get our doctrine right. You said that before.
Yeah.
Yes, there are certain but I've heard you bring that up 2 or 3 times, and your list of doctrine requirements to check off is very short so far that I've heard. And I've noticed a couple of times to say, well, define it for me. Give me 1, 2, and 3. You don't ever take that bait, really.
Right.
So it's like, all right, well. But I'll tell you, when I was a kid, my mom, I was asking all those tough questions, 10, 11, 12 years old, and she's trying to figure out an answer. And, like, how do I get to heaven?
Right.
You just have to believe. That was the way she answered. Basically, you have to believe in God. You have to believe Jesus was his son and died for your sins and accept him as your Savior, and that's it. Okay, well, listen, to everybody, anybody, these are not specific to me. These are hypotheticals. What? All right, well, what if I believe but I
there
drink?
we go.
What if I believe but I don't go to church? What if I believe but I, have bad language in traffic?
Right.
What if I believe and whatever? We can do this all day long. Okay. You shouldn't do those things because if you have God in your heart, you shouldn't feel the need to do those things.
Right.
But what if I do them anyway? Like, what if I'm working on it and I just never get to where I need to be with it? So I think I don't know where exactly the line is, but as I understood it, there's a song I was listening to. If I had time, I'd have sent it to you. I'd be curious to hear some of your thoughts on it, but it's called Heart Attack by a guy named Corey Smith.
Okay.
And it's he's basically all these questions. These are all the answers to a heart attack away, right? But there's a line in there that says, talking about the preacher sees a narrow path to heaven. I see a river deep and wide. There's that different. Okay, well, if all I got to do is believe in God and Jesus as his son and that he died for my sins and I accept that, well, that's a pretty simple thing I should be able to do. Now, if I've got to walk the life that we're talking about on this show and chasing that always constant strive, well, I've been in one camp for a little while, and I've been in the other camp for a long time, and I don't know where that all kind of falls. But I'm just kind of curious about the Baptists, especially, but I think all religions have their own ways of saying you do this, 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 and this, and this, you go to hell.
Right.
And a lot of times it's overly exaggerating, probably that. And I don't know. Let me pause first. You answer there.
Maybe I can do it this way. I look at salvation. That's salvation being. It's a process to me. And what do I mean by that is you look at the scriptures and it says, for by grace through faith you've been saved. Well, that's have been saved. You go to another passage and it talks you will be saved. And so to me there is a process that we are working out our salvation. Yes, salvation is through Jesus Christ, believing in Him. But now what happens is there's a relationship there to where now we are working that out. And again, I'm not working for my salvation. Believe me, the salvation is purchased by Christ and Christ alone. That's it. That's the only thing I have. I can't be baptized. I can't say enough good things or enough Hail Marys that it's going to get my salvation. That's through Christ. But the Bible paints this picture of what it calls sanctification, becoming more like Christ. And that is as we grow. And that's where things in our life that, used to be there, maybe habits or attitudes or, hey, look, I'll be the first to say this, man. I used to love to go to the golf course and, I'd play 5 cents a stroke, And the reason I played for that little amount of money is I can't afford to lose because I know I'm going to lose, but I enjoyed it because it made me competitive. Well, the Lord just showed me one day, Ben, if you're going to gamble for a nickel, you might as well gamble for what's the difference? And that was just the Lord working with me. And so where people are in that process of sanctification is, it might be something He's working on today. That doesn't mean, you do X and man, you are out off the team. I don't think God is looking to cut anybody off the team per se, but He is looking for, just like with Gabe, I'm looking for that development. All right, he may be the smallest and the littlest guy on the field, but man, towards the end of the year, it don't matter about the size. Is he playing the position? Is he learning how to be there? Is he putting himself in the right position to make an interception, make a tackle, catch the ball, whatever the case may be? And that's where I believe with God that grace is so important. That one, we're saved by it, but then it's as that grace comes into our life, and it's that grace that day by day, we're not only saved by it, but we grow by it, or we're sanctified, or become more like Christ by it. And then ultimately, there will be that day that I will be saved. When, this struggle on earth, I won't have to, it's done. I'll be glorified. I will be like Him, is what 1 John tells us. So it is that process of becoming more like Christ. So I don't know that, and I think the thing of it is, we're all in this process. And so where I am might not be where you are. Struggles you have, I may not have. Struggles I have, you may not have. And I think that's the beauty of God being the Father, of looking at His different children and understanding we're different. I've got 3 kids. I can tell you, all 3 are unique in their own way, in their own style. I know one. I know how. At least I hope. I think I know how to handle. One may need more encouragement at times. Sometimes the other one may need a kick in the backside more so than encouragement. But you got to know their personalities and know that where they are and how they're developing and helping them in learning how to be these young adults that they are. And I think God does the same thing with us. He knows our weaknesses, our strengths. He knows our hurts. He knows what we have anxieties over. And I think that's where, again, when you trust Him, He's going to begin working out those things and pointing out those issues in our life that He may want to basically take sandpaper over and smooth out those rough areas. Does that make sense?
It does. I think that for people that... I got to really think about how I'm trying to say this. So, you're describing a process, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm misunderstanding this, but you're describing a process of drawing closer to God.
Or a process of salvation. I mean, I think it's not one
so let's go there for a second. So This is interesting to me. One of the topics that I had at one point was we could spend probably an episode going over cliches that we use in church. That maybe people
Yeah, I wish we would.
And,
That'd be
and
great.
somebody brought up to me at one point that, and I thought that I was the only one that felt this way, I guess, but that phrase, got saved. That's a popular.
Right, yeah.
I thought that one must have been popular everywhere. Apparently, that's only popular at Baptist.
That's a Baptist thing,
thing.
yeah, for the most
And I'll be
part.
honest with you, I'm not comfortable with the cliches. If you ever hear me say things like, I've noticed on the show, and these aren't even things that I do on purpose. I just
We
noticed
just do
listening
them.
back to the show. You like to say walk with the Lord. I say chase God. Kind of
Right.
the same thing. But walk with the Lord's probably a little bit more. I'm trying to find a different way of saying everything.
No, yeah,
that's,
I get
that's
that.
the reason nobody understands
I get
me
that.
is I try to invent a new way to say everything that I need to say.
And I think it's one of oftentimes what I, and again, I don't think it's a bad thing. One of the things that I like to try to do is, okay, what does the scriptures call it?
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I think it's refreshing at times to say, all right, yeah, pursuing of God or a walk with God, because it does talk about our walk. But I think,
Right.
yeah, I think
And I
those
say
are,
that-
I love that.
And I
There's
use that
fresh
as
ways
well.
of putting it.
I think if I get to a point where I start to hear myself constantly say chasing God, then I'll try to change it up again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's
I
right.
like to. I don't like to say the same things over and over. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm when you have to listen as much time as I have lately listening to yourself talk, you
Well,
realize
that's
there's
it.
some work.
And then when you have to do a lot of talking,
Yeah.
believe me, I try my best to say, all right, am I saying the
Yeah.
same things? Let's see, what have I got to do to change it or maybe teach it a little different? Because it is. I mean, you teach 30 minutes each week on a Sunday morning, podcasts, videos, everything else that you don't want it just to be just your, same words that you're using just in different settings.
So for listeners who may not be as familiar with Southern Baptist culture, which I imagine is most listeners are familiar with us because I know who most of them are. But
Right.
for anyone who's not, I mean, I guess being saved is the crowning jewel moment of Baptist. That's it. You are or you're not. That's the day you accept Christ. You usually get baptized, and then that's
Right.
the are you saved, are you not? I've literally heard an atheist argue with me that, well, it's like, well, if you're the one that's right and I'm not, I was baptized when I was 16, then I changed my mind, so therefore I'm in if you're right and I'm wrong. Well, I don't think if you get baptized when you're 8 and get saved or whatever when you're 8, and then you never think of God again, that's
Right.
the same type of salvation. But that's like the big thing for us. But see, or I'm saying us as a stereotypical Baptist, it's like, well, if you're saved,
Yeah.
that's all that matters. When you did it, it doesn't really matter. How you lived before that doesn't matter. It's just were you saved or were you not.
Right.
That's taught a lot.
Right.
I don't think it's right, but it's taught a lot.
And I think it's one of, it's kind of one of these again, these phrases that we've used. It's called easy believism. It's what I've heard it referred to is okay, I just believe and I'm in.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's one of, I always go back to, we're dealing with the heart and the mind of God. So I'm gonna leave that to him.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm gonna tell you what the scriptures teach and kind of go with that. I still go back to, I was spiritually dead and made spiritually alive. There has to be I just for the life of me, I can't see how I can go from that to that and not be remarkably different.
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, I think it goes back to, I don't think it's just, because the Bible says the demons believe and they tremble. So that's not a big belief. It's not just a belief. I believe it is, as Jesus says, take up your cross and follow me. I think it is something that, okay, I've died to self. My way, my will, my agenda has been crucified. But now it's about Christ's will, Christ's agenda, and Christ's life now in me. And that's where I'm coming from. That's what I believe salvation is all about. It's when you truly take on that, what it means to be a disciple, when you truly take on what it means to take up his cross and follow him.
So you describe it and think of salvation as a process more than an event.
Right.
And I agree.
To a degree.
Yeah. So I understand what you're saying, and it's if you've said this a few times in different ways on the show, but basically, how can it not save you? If God's truly in your heart, how can it not change you? I'm sorry,
Right.
not save, change.
Yeah. Well, and you've heard me preach it before.
If it hasn't changed you, it hasn't saved you. That's right.
Yeah, that's one
Yeah.
of my beliefs.
Right, and I think that's it's a very sound
Right.
principle that makes a lot of sense. For most people, I think, it's a binary thing for us because the consequence at the end of the road is so polarizing. Okay?
Right,
We
yeah.
want to know, are we in or are we out? All right. Now, once I'm in, yes, I understand I need to chase more, and I need
Right.
to do because once I'm in and I accept that salvation and it truly is in my heart, and I appreciate how much grace and all that, then yes, I'm going to start
Right.
to do those other things. But step one is, am I in or am I out? That's what most people are worried about. Is it? I mean, I don't know. This is a weird one for me, and I have no idea what the answer is. But do you think it? Can a person not know if? I mean, if you don't know, is that probably a bad sign? If you don't know, if you don't know,
let me
then you
ask you
don't.
this. Let me ask you this. Can a person know? I guess that would be the best way to ask it is, can a person know? Because if the answer is no to that, then the answer is yes to the other. So can a person know, yeah, I know I'm in the family? Me personally, I think there is. And I believe the best place to go for that would be the book of 1 John. 1 John, he basically writes saying, these things I've written that you may know that he is the Christ, and that you by believing in him. And so you can go to book of John too, but 1 John really puts it into practice, because 1 John says some things that are very convicting, such as anyone who says he loves God yet hates his brother, he's a liar and the truth's not in him. Okay, so there's a test. There are several tests in the book of 1 John that you can look at. Now, again, do we always do those perfectly? No. But at the same time, there should be that love for others, that care for others. There are several, like I said, go through the book of 1 John, you'll see all throughout there that there are tests that you can know, okay, I'm in, or I know Christ, and Christ is in me. You know, and I think it's almost one of those things of, I don't want to say it's do you know you're married or not, but it is one of, I remember when I was younger, I had doubts. God, am I truly in? And I remember thinking, I better pray the prayer of salvation again just to make sure. As a kid, now 9 years old, worried to death about, I don't want to miss heaven, and so therefore I want to make sure. And I wish somebody would have just said, okay, let's examine this. Let's look at the book of 1 John, and are these evidence in your life? And there are plenty there that you can look and say, okay, yeah, now I have that assurance.
Yeah.
Not that I didn't necessarily have it before, but man, I got it for sure now.
Yeah, and I think there's an important thing to point out here somewhere, though, that it's not we're not grading you on your virtues here and,
Right.
your actions. It's your heart and where you're at, because you can be somebody who has a short sin list.
Right.
You can have
You can be a good person.
Can you have a short sin list and not have your heart in the right place?
As far as let me see if I can put.
That's
this way.
legalism.
Yeah.
You're acting on legalism.
I think there are some people out there that may not know Christ that are just as nice as they can be. Mm-hmm. Okay, hey, I know several that, as far as good people go, they are as good as gold to people. They love people, to care for people, but again, apart from Christ, there is no salvation. So, yeah, you can have a short sin list and still not be right with God. Now, the thing of it is there's still that sin that has separated us from God. Mm-hmm. And I think it's one of, we got to be careful what standard we use. Because God's standard is perfection. Mm-hmm. And none of us hit that. So you can be one of the nicest people in the world, you still fell short. I like to use the comparison of, I hate to say this, is let's compare, okay, you can be the best or second best ACC team in football. Mm-hmm. That probably will get you in the top 15. Mm-hmm. Second best. Sometimes it might get you better, but you're probably going to be 15th or lower, maybe even top 10, but you still hadn't hit that perfection tier. Mm-hmm. And I think it's one of, if we use the tier of what I think is nice and what I think is right and what I think my standard, then yeah, a lot more people may get in. But God's got a different standard, and I think it's one of, we need to be very careful about the term fair and the term, okay, well, they're nice, they're good people. Well, the Bible says there's none good.
Well, and that kind of starts to get on another topic that we had texted about in the week that we might get into, and I don't know that we might get into that one next week on the
Part
fairness
A
of it
and
all,
Part B.
because I know my answer, and the person who asked me that, I told him, well, I know what Ben's going to say.
Right.
Before, and I relayed
Right.
that, but we may get into that at some point. But one that I think that you've said also, and I think this kind of ties back to legalism as well. I think at this point our show is probably talking more to people who are current followers and
Right.
current Christians, and there's, I don't know if this show is going to be something that, if are we hoping to strengthen the faith of existing Christians or find new Christians? I don't know what we're doing. Both seem to be
I think it's a little
smart
mixture
things
of both.
to do.
On the
Both
week.
seem to be good things, because the stronger we all are in our faith, the more we're going to show God to the outside world. So I don't think it necessarily there has to be one or the other that you're looking at. But I think what you said a lot on the show, and is what I heard a lot last week, is that we're all in this together. We're all in the same race. We're all in the same thing. And I think that's where we mess things up so much in church and religion and stuff like that, is that we get so much in a competition of I'm here and you're there, I'm this and you're that we completely miss the boat that we are 8 billion people in a huge mess, microscopically significant to God and His plan and His wisdom and all this stuff. And we should be doing everything that we possibly can to help each other find God, not get into, I want to say a bad word so bad, but I won't. Into matches to see who
I get you, what kind of matches.
who's a better person. It's not about who the better person is. All of us are terrible in that light.
Yeah.
We all need to be working together to show more of those qualities so the world can see it's still there.
Yeah.
And not so, maybe even not selfishly worry so much about our own salvation, and worry more about just how do we help people see more of what we're trying to get out there. And then you can't. You'll run into your salvation in the process. Maybe, I don't know.
And maybe maybe one of the things we need to think about is this. And I love what one of my evangelism professors and several other people have said. This is basically evangelism, sharing the gospel, is one beggar trying to help another beggar, telling them where to find bread.
Yep.
And if we look at it that way and I think it goes back to, you're right. None of us have a market on this thing. We're all working or trying to find, seeking the Lord, and we got to realize it's by His grace. But then it becomes, okay, if it's by His grace, then I want to show that grace to others. And so I think you're 100% right. Is rather than worrying about all that I'm right in, or basically what separates us, maybe we need to look at what is it that brings us together. And truth be known, we're all created in the image of God, and truth be known, we're all sinners. And we're all in need of salvation. So let's start there, and then let's work on. But again, I think it goes back to having that love of Christ in your heart and a love for people. That's going to make a difference. Which kind of brings up that topic you had on the other of, okay, so how do I do the golden rule?
Yep.
Because that's in the scriptures.
Yep.
Again, what ought to be a fun study one day is, all right, what's in the Bible and what isn't? God helps those who help themselves. Not in the Bible. Let's see. What's another one? Money is the root of all evil. Not in the Bible. The love of all money is the root of all evil. That's in the Bible. So money is not the root of all evil. It's the love of money. So there are many things that you hear said that, we think that's early to bed, early to rise. Not in the Bible. All right. But there might be, there's just so many things that people say that is really not in the Bible. Well, the golden rule is one. Do unto others as you would have done unto you. It's Matthew 7. That's the words of Jesus. And so I think it goes to how do we go about loving others or doing unto others as we would have done unto us. And I think, man, that might be a good place to start because it's simple. It's one that we all know. We've said it since first grade or kindergarten. So what does that mean?
Well, and I would love to, and it ain't going to be in 2 minutes, but I think when we were, when I asked that this week, I said, sometimes I don't want to be the way I would want to be treated isn't the way that person's going to want to be treated.
Right.
And then you kind of, but at the same time, I felt bad. I said in my text, I don't want to challenge Jesus' words because these were in red. I know not to challenge them.
Yeah.
But might he have maybe meant that we should treat him the way he would treat them? And you said, well, maybe take a step back at a higher level, and it's like, no, you want to put their needs and their best interest first, maybe, and that is maybe the level that is different. It maybe not be in how you put my needs first might be different than how I would put yours first. You might have different ways you would prefer to be treated, but the idea is the general thought of being selfless and putting other people before you.
I'll give you the. Maybe this is where we start next week, or
Yeah.
maybe not. Who knows? We never know. But I think in
I'd like to
closing,
finish one of these thoughts one of these days.
one of the thoughts that I would say is this, and the way I've always kind of interpreted that verse is this: as much as I hate to be broken down on I-40, as much as I'd hate for that to be me. That's how I should. If I see somebody broken down, maybe I should help out.
Yeah.
As much as I
Put yourself
hate,
in that
you know,
position.
putting myself in that place, man, I would feel bad if that was me. And so if I would feel bad, then maybe go and say, listen, I know that was. And they may not feel the same way, but at least you're showing that, hey, I
Yeah.
care for you.
Yeah.
And I think therein lies what God's looking for in there is that we are showing compassion, empathy, and sympathy, and then love to those who, you know, may be struggling. And sometimes it may not even be a hurt or a struggle, but man, I want to love others as just as much as I would want somebody to every now and then just say, hey man, I appreciate that job you did.
Yeah.
That's a thankless job that nobody notices.
Well, and it's you may upset that person. They may not like it.
Yeah.
Because everybody's not going to like Christ-like qualities and treating people the way that they might jaw off at you and yell at you and blah blah blah. It might happen, but
Yeah.
if you're walking in a Christ-like way, not everybody's going to like that.
No.
So you
No,
shouldn't concern
that's
yourself.
what we've been looking at in 1 Peter.
That's right.
You will, you don't expect the world to applaud you.
No.
It's not going to happen.
And it seems to be probably getting more and more that way the further we go along. So
That's right. That's right. Listen, I've enjoyed this, and I hope the listeners are still in tune with us. And again, as we discuss things, I'm sure there's going to be things that people disagree or hate, but hey, that's all right. We love you, and we can disagree, but still be agreeable. You know.
that's right. Well, I hope we didn't run anybody off this week. I have no idea. I enjoyed the conversation. I don't know. We covered 3 of my 4 rabbit holes, so that's probably 1 or 2 too many. But I enjoyed it, and no, I don't think we'll talk through if you want to edit anything. I didn't feel like we needed any. There was
I
anything
think
we
it was
needed to
good,
cut
pretty
out.
good, man.
I
And like I
enjoyed
said, I mean, it's going to be one of, as we talk, there's always going to be things that come up that, I think it's just one of, that's the beauty of a God that we can't figure all out. Is, hey, if I can figure him out, he's not impressive to me. But if there's always that mystery or something that I can't understand, such as salvation, everything in the Bible, I want there to be that mystery because, man, that to me says, okay, this God is so much bigger than I could ever dream up or even contrive in my heart or think of. I mean, it's so much bigger than that. So I want my God to be mysterious at times that I'm not sure exactly how that works.
Well, and I think we as humans just need to start measuring ourselves against him instead of each other and realize that we're literally splitting hairs between microscopic percentages between us and each other when compared to his scale. It's
Right.
like,
What's
what
your
difference
scale?
does it make versus, if you were at church versus me versus this?
That's right.
Compared to him,
Yeah, we all fall short.
we
Very
are
short.
a couple of peewee teams arguing
that's right.
over which is going to win the Super Bowl.
That's it.
When you're not even close.
Yeah,
I mean,
you're not even in the same league.
That's right.
And I think that's a great way to look at it because that's a perfect way to look at it because his standard is perfection.
Well, I hope you have a good rest of your day. It didn't sound like the rest of it was going to be that fun. From what you
It's
said,
busy.
but,
It's
yeah.
busy. We got somebody said the other day, man, you do more funerals than anybody I know. I don't know that I do more than some others, but I have my share. And at the same time, funeral doesn't always have to be the saddest thing in the world. And sometimes you can celebrate.
Yeah.
And that's maybe that's a challenge. Live your life so that you can celebrate, knowing that hey, he's home and he did it well. That's the way to live your life.
That's good parting words. Well, man, I appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time
Man,
today. I know it was a busy, crazy
man,
day.
I love it.
appreciate
I love it. I really do, and I appreciate this. And I always love when you tell me it's ready. I'm jumping on it because I don't know. I go and listen to it as somebody I don't know these 2 guys from Adam, and
Yeah.
I thoroughly enjoy it.
The ones that, and this will be a quick one today because I don't have too much going on. Last week, every other Tuesday, I've got horseback riding that night,
Right.
and it's like I get back and I've got a small window. If I don't get it done, it's going to be
Thursday,
at
Friday.
least.
Yep.
And but this week should be fine. I don't have anything going on tonight, so I should have it out this afternoon. But man, I get excited about it too, and it's harder for me to listen to it as if I haven't heard it because I've
Right.
usually heard it 3 or 4
Right.
times.
Yes, that's it.
But I keep the quicker I can do the editing, the less that happens. But Anyway, well, I appreciate it, and
All right, my
enjoy
man.
the rest of your day, man.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.